So, um, navigating modern life feels pretty complex, right? Just this constant flood of information. So many difficult choices.
Yeah, definitely. It can feel overwhelming. You're always asking, where do you find guidance that actually sticks? Something solid.
Exactly. Something that cuts through all the noise and feels, well, relevant now.
It's a fundamental search, isn't it? We're all looking for that kind of anchor in a world that just keeps changing so fast.
Absolutely. And that search is pretty much what we're diving into today. We've gathered a bunch of sources, some online articles, a video discussion, and wisdom from a really ancient text.
All grappling with these exact questions. Specifically, we're looking at insights from the Bhagavad Gita.
Focusing quite a bit on chapter 2, actually.
Right. And our goal here, our sort of mission for this deep dive, is to unpack the key ideas these sources are talking about.
We're looking at things like duty, the nature of who we really are, how to handle outcomes, especially when they're not what we hoped for.
And ultimately, finding some genuine peace. Think of this as a way to get a handle on these pretty profound concepts and see how they might actually apply to your life today.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The Bhagavad Gita itself. It's basically this incredible conversation, right?
Yeah, between Lord Krishna and this warrior, Arjuna. And it happens right on a battlefield, just before a huge war is about to kick off.
Talk about high stakes.
Incredibly intense. Arjuna looks out, sees his own family, cousins, teachers, friends on the other side, and he just crumbles.
Completely overwhelmed, grief, confusion. The sources mention him questioning everything.
Yeah, like Krishna, what's the use of winning? What's the point of enjoying anything or even living if the people we care about are, well, if we have to fight them?
And that's not just some ancient story point, is it?
Yeah.
The sources frame this as the universal dilemma.
Exactly. We all hit those moments where our personal feelings, loyalty, love, fear, attachment clash with what we think we should do, our duty, or the right action.
Arjuna's struggle feels real because, well, it mirrors the tough choices we face.
So Krishna sees Arjuna like this totally distraught. What does he do? He doesn't just give him a pat on the back, right?
No, he goes much deeper. He doesn't ignore the emotions, but he starts guiding Arjuna towards a higher understanding.
And the first big thing he introduces, based on our sources, is this fundamental distinction.
Between what?
Between the physical body, which is temporary, impermanent, and the eternal essence inside, the soul, the spirit.
Okay, that's a major concept. How does that help Arjuna on a battlefield?
Well, it shifts the perspective entirely. The sources pull out key verses here. They say the spirit, the soul is eternal. It can't be destroyed. It's everywhere.
Right. So bodies, they come and go. They're perishable. But the spirit inside, that's unborn. It never dies. It's ancient. It can't kill, and it can't be killed.
Exactly. There's this idea drawn from the verses that death is just like changing clothes. The eternal soul discards an old body and takes on a new one.
Okay, thinking about that distinction, this temporary body versus the eternal self, why should that matter to someone listening right now, dealing with traffic jams and deadlines?
Well, because it's the foundation for non-attachment. If your whole identity is wrapped up in the temporary stuff, your body, feelings, job title, possessions, successes, failures, you're going to be constantly tossed around.
Like a ship without an anchor.
Precisely. True happiness, according to these teachings, comes from connecting with that deeper, unchanging self. And the sources really stress that learning to endure the temporary things, pain, pleasure, heat, cold, without being totally thrown off balance, that's key.
Okay, so Krishna lays down this profound idea of the eternal self. But Arjuna is still standing there, facing his family, needing to act. How does that knowledge connect to doing something?
Great question. That's where the conversation shifts into action and duty. Concepts like karma yoga, the yoga of action, and buddhi yoga, the yoga of wisdom or intellect.
Right, because just standing there isn't an option for Arjuna.
No. The sources make it clear. Inaction is not the answer here. His specific duty, his dharma, you could think of it as his righteous path or responsibility in that moment, is actually to fight for what's right. Performing your duty, even when it's incredibly hard, is vital.
And the sources mention consequences for not doing it, like failure, losing honor.
Yeah, losing reputation, which is seen as worse than death in that context, and even incurring sin or negative karmic consequences.
But here's the twist, right? The core of karma yoga isn't just doing your duty.
Exactly. It's doing your duty without being attached to the results. This is huge. There's that famous line everyone quotes. You have a right to your actions, but never to the fruits of your actions.
They control the effort, not the outcome.
Wow. That alone feels like it could change how you approach, well, almost anything in modern life. We're so obsessed with results.
Totally. The ideal state of mind described is do your absolute best, focus your intention, maybe connect with something higher, the divine, and then let go. Let go of whether you win or lose, succeed or fail. That even-mindedness, that balance regardless of the outcome, that's what they call yoga here.
That's yoga in this context, yes. Equanimity.
And Buddha yoga fits in how? The yoga of intellect.
It's about using that wisdom, the understanding of the eternal self, the nature of reality, to actually guide your choices and actions. Using your intelligence consciously, not just reacting based on emotion or wanting a specific result.
Makes sense. So that wisdom helps you break free from that cycle of just acting out of desire for rewards.
Right. It helps liberate you from the bondage of karma that's driven purely by attachment to outcomes. And it's also about rising above what the Gita calls the three gunas, the modes of material nature.
Goodness, passion, ignorance, those energies that influence us.
Yeah, like inertia or laziness, frantic activity or desire, and clarity or balance. And also moving beyond just being tossed between pairs of opposite success and failure, pleasure and pain, finding a steady center in truth.
There's an analogy in the sources for this, wasn't there? Something about a well versus a lake.
Oh yeah, that's a great one from verse 2.46. It compares the limited purpose served by a small well to the way a huge reservoir, a great expanse of water, serves all purposes.
So understanding the big picture, the ultimate truth Krishna is talking about, fulfills everything more completely than just chasing small, temporary goals.
Exactly. It puts everything in perspective.
Yeah.
And performing your duties with that mindset without getting yanked around by results, that's what builds real inner strength and resilience.
Okay, so you learn to act from this place, understanding the eternal self, doing your duty but detached from the outcome, guided by wisdom. Where does this path ultimately lead?
It leads towards real deep peace and eventually liberation. The sources definitely trace this path. True peace, they explain, doesn't come from getting everything you want.
Which seems counterintuitive in our culture.
Right. It comes from letting go of those constant worldly cravings, the greed, the feeling of mine, the demands of the ego.
And the text warns pretty strongly about the other path, doesn't it? Getting caught up in sense objects.
Oh, absolutely. It describes this downward spiral. Dwelling on things you desire leads to attachment. Attachment breeds more desire. When desire is blocked, it turns into anger.
Anger clouds your judgment.
Leads to delusion, loss of reason, and ultimately, ruin or destruction. It's a stark warning about how focusing only on the external can unravel you internally.
So how do you stop that cascade?
Right.
One of the sources, the video, highlighted a specific verse, right? 2.65.
It focused on how this deep inner peace, this prasadam, descends when your mind, your intellect, is firmly fixed on something higher, on the divine. And that peace just dissolves sorrow.
That sounds like the state you're aiming for. The sources talk about the marks or characteristics of someone who's reached that state, right? Someone with steady wisdom.
Yeah, chapter 2 gives a really vivid description across several verses. This person is free from selfish desires, satisfied from within. They aren't shaken by sorrows or chasing pleasures.
Free from attachment, fear, anger.
Exactly. Not wildly excited by good fortune or depressed by bad.
Steady. And that famous tortoise analogy comes in here.
Yes. Like a tortoise pulling its limbs into its shell, such a person can withdraw their senses from external distractions and find stability within. Their wisdom is firm.
There was another image, too, about desires flowing into the mind like rivers into the ocean.
That's verse 2.70. The idea is that desires might still enter the mind, but because the mind is already full, stable, like the ocean, it isn't disturbed by them. It remains steady.
Wow. And achieving this state, this letting go of desires, this inner calm, that's the path to liberation, nirvana.
That's what's indicated, yes. Attaining that state, even at the end of life, leads to liberation from the cycle of rebirth, according to verse 2.72.
Now, we focused a lot on chapter 2 because our sources did. But it's good to remember these ideas connect to the whole Gita, right?
Oh, definitely. The sources touched on how even making a little progress on the spiritual path has benefits. It's never wasted effort. That's from verse 2.40.
And that idea of divine grace, connecting to divine as a path to peace, like in verse 2.65 from the video, that's also a theme.
Absolutely. And it's important to note, while chapter 2 really emphasizes knowledge and wisdom guiding action, the Gita as a whole offers multiple paths, selfless service, karma yoga, knowledge, jnana yoga, devotion, bhakti yoga, meditation, all seen as ways to connect with that ultimate reality.
So bringing this ancient wisdom into our world, the 21st century, the sources really hammered home that these teachings are universal, didn't they?
They did, not just for one culture or religion. They offer practical tools for anyone trying to navigate the complexities we face today, whatever your background.
It's pretty amazing to see the impact it's had historically.
Mhm.
Figures like Thoreau, Emerson, Einstein, even Oppenheimer, Gandhi,
Mhm.
all found inspiration there.
And the modern examples mentioned in the sources are really striking too, like an Indian origin Canadian minister taking her oath of office on the Gita.
Or the man finding guidance from it while in prison. It shows its power in really diverse, sometimes difficult, modern situations.
And the fact that there's a popular Chinese Gita translation, that speaks volumes about its cross-cultural resonance right now.
Yeah, these aren't just dusty old ideas. People are actively using this text for guidance today.
So let's try to pull together the core insights from this deep dive. We started with Arjuna's dilemma, that clash between duty and emotion that feels so familiar.
Then Krishna's fundamental guidance. Understand your true nature as the eternal self, separate from the temporary body.
Which leads to that crucial principle. Act, do your duty, but let go of attachment to the results. Cultivate that inner balance, that equanimity.
And all of this points towards finding lasting peace and freedom, not by changing the world outside necessarily, but by transforming your inner world. Letting go of cravings, ego, finding that inner calm.
These aren't just abstract philosophies. They feel like really practical tools for dealing with your daily challenges, the information overload, the stress, and finding some sense of centeredness.
For sure. And if we circle back to how the sources frame it, the real battle isn't just on some ancient field.
Right, it's the internal one. Fought daily within our own minds, our own consciousness, with our desires and attachments.
Which really leaves you with a powerful question to think about. If that internal struggle is the real one, what piece of wisdom from this ancient text are you going to arm yourself with for your own life's challenges?